It's 9 o'clock here on the West Coast. I'm Anthony Davis. This is the Anthony Davis Show. Hope you had a nice long Easter weekend. Happy Easter to you if you didn't get Happy Eastered already. I had a nice one. I went to Disneyland, which I have never done before. Never been to Disneyland. Took the kids. I can tell you all about that a bit later, but there was a lot. It was a lot. It's a lot. I mean, aside from the $800, it's a lot. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, it's a lot. Anyway, that aside, we'll talk about that a little bit later. We've got lots on the menu today because, of course, there's news aplenty. And that's kind of what we do. We look at the news and you can comment, join in, take part, whatever you want to say, have your voice. You can message me with backchannel.tv. It's just a little website. Go to that on your phone, on your browser, wherever, backchannel.tv. You can also talk to your Echo Show if you have an Echo Show device. Wake it up, say the word say, and then you message. And then the other way is, of course, to follow the show on YouTube. It's streaming live there as well, as Backchannel is the only place you can listen to, watch and chat with hosts of live shows right here on your device. We also have a new feature that's now active and applicable to Echo Show users. You can now touch the subscribe button, which is located on the screen, and then you get connected to the activity here on the show. This will also allow you to receive reminders about the shows coming up, and you'll always be in the know. So it's on the bottom left of the screen, and the alarm will go off on your Alexa devices at the start of every episode to say, the show's starting, just to remind you. So just hit the subscribe button, and then that will, I'm doing it now, look, see, subscribe. I'm just subscribed to my own show, isn't that wonderful? There we go, subscribed. Oh, I got 2 subscribers, both me. The news looks like this. Former Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, whose ex-wife recently accused him of physical abuse, said he will not drop his political comeback bid, because, of course, in America, nobody has any shame. Carry on. Just carry on like it never happened. Say it very loudly, or say something else very loudly, and then the other thing kind of disappears. Also, Americans over 60 should get a second COVID vaccine booster, says the White House official Dr. Ashish Jha. Says there are now pretty compelling evidence that a second round of corona booster vaccines would help protect older people. And then on this day in 1983, which I remember very well, I think 1983 was when Return of the Jedi came out. Everything has a Star Wars connotation in my house. I actually watched The Force Awakens last night, and the one, the first one with Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, and it's very good. It really is very good. But if you're not a Star Wars fan, you'll watch it and you'll be like, "What is this? Like, it's ridiculous. It's just so stupid." So yes, on this day in 1983, the Pulitzer Prize was awarded to Alice Walker for the novel The Color Purple. We'll take a look at the lasting legacy of the story that she wrote. It's won a whole bunch of awards on Broadway recently as well, hasn't it? We also have the morning papers to look through. Stacey's no Star Wars fan, she says. Well, it's okay. Not everybody is, and I respect that. I just, I don't like sport. And I hope that people don't try and indoctrinate me into a world of sport, because I'm just not into it. But I like Star Wars, Star Wars played a very big part at Disneyland, by the way. There's a whole new thing called Galaxy's Edge, and it's basically a Star Wars world that is about a square mile of pure Star Wars. They've built a whole city, and everything there is in the Star Wars world. But you know something, and here's the thing. Here's the rub. They said, even the workers selling, the people just like selling merchandise or working in the restaurant and stuff in Galaxy's Edge, they'll all be dressed in authentic Star Wars clothing. Well, someone didn't get the memo about the Dr. Martens. Because why do they do that? Why do they give them a costume but forget to give them shoes and tell them to bring their own shoes? Because to me, that's not in the Star Wars world. The whole point of the Star Wars world is that you are led to believe that you're in that world. Nobody had Dr. Martens or Skechers in a galaxy far, far away. Anyway. New York Times is where we're going to start our paper review this morning. The Mar-a-Lago machine, Trump as a modern-day party boss. Yes, this story out of Palm Beach, Florida. It says, on any given night, Donald Trump will stroll onto the patio at Mar-a-Lago and say a few words from a translucent lectern, welcoming whatever favored candidate is paying him for the privilege of fundraising there. This is a special place, Mr. Trump said on one evening in February at his private club. I used to say ground zero, but after the World Trade Center, we don't use that term anymore. This is the place where everybody wants to be. What an unsavory thing to say. Such a terrible person, isn't he? For 15 months, a parade of supplicants, senators, governors, congressional leaders, Republican strivers of all stripes have made the trek to pledge their loyalty and pitch their candidacies. Some have hired Mr. Trump's advisors, hoping to gain an edge in seeking his endorsement. Some have bought ads that run only on Fox News in South Florida. Some bear gifts, others dish dirt. Almost everyone parrots his lie that the 2020 election was stolen. While working from a large wooden desk reminiscent of the one he used in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump has transformed Mar-a-Lago's old bridal suite into a shadow GOP headquarters, amassing more than $120 million, a war chest more than double that of the Republican National Committee itself. Federal records show that his PAC, raised more online than the party on every day, but two in the last 6 months of 2021, one of which was Christmas Eve. And while other past presidents have ceded the political stage, Trump has done the opposite, aggressively pursuing an agenda of vengeance against Republicans who have wronged him, endorsing more than 140 candidates nationwide and turning the 2022 primaries into a stress test of his continued sway. Inspiring fear, hoarding cash, doling out favors, and seeking to crush rivals, Trump is behaving not merely as a power broker, but as something closer to the head of a 19th century political machine. Yeah, I mean, look, the guy is very clever. You know, he is very clever at benefiting himself. He has never done anything for anybody else. When he endorses another candidate, it's not because he thinks that they are going to do a good job for the constituents and that they're going to bring, a better quality of life to their state or to their district. No. It's how does it benefit him? That's all that matters. That's all that matters. Fate of Mariupol hinges on battle at steel factory is the headline. It says... After weeks of shelling and bombings, the Russian siege of the critical Ukrainian port city of Mariupol has culminated in a last stand by a few thousand Ukrainian troops holed up in a sprawling, smouldering steel plant that backs up to the sea. Russia has given the Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol until Sunday morning to lay down their weapons or be eliminated. On Sunday, the forces at the plant ignored the deadline, and Ukrainian officials vowed they would not surrender. In response, the Russian assault intensified, with missiles and bombs hitting the city and new attacks occurring near the plant, the Ukrainian military said. The showdown at the Azovstal steel plant near Mariupol's port has become the last line of Ukraine's defense in preventing Russia from securing a strategically important land bridge between its stronghold in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, which Russia has been struggling to control. Capturing Mariupol would be a major victory for Russia. It could strengthen its push to command Ukraine's east, cut off an important Ukrainian port, and bolster flagging morale amongst Russian troops. But Ukrainian officials said on Sunday the struggle was not over for Mariupol, which for 2 months has tied up Russian troops and resources that are badly needed elsewhere. There it is, you see. I think here in America, the people are concerned about Ukraine basically for gas prices. That's the reason why Ukraine is important to them. It's because, if gas prices are $4, $5, $6, $7, a gallon, then that is obviously a big problem. And as long as this war rages, they see gas prices being high. And obviously people have empathy and sadness for the loss of life, but they also recognize that the knock-on effect is very inconvenient. It's very inconvenient. That's what we're dealing with here, tragically, sadly. And then there's a photograph of it's a shocking photograph from Kharkiv on Sunday as Russian missiles continue to bombard the city. And a photograph of a young man with his head in his hands, just like in despair, watching his apartment building burn. Civilian targets being hit by Russian missiles again and again and again. A story about the perilous job of toppling Confederate statues. It says, as Devon Henry and his construction team take down the last remnants of statues that dotted this former capital of the Confederacy, they have developed a grim game. Random passers-by, some in vehicles, other on foot, often make known their disapproval of his work, so often that Mr. Henry, who is black, began to keep count of the many times he or a black crew member was called an incendiary racial slur. The count is 72 and climbing, according to Mr. Henry, who has emerged as the go-to statue remover, not only for this city, but for all of Virginia and other parts of the South. Statue removal has become a lucrative line of work amid the ongoing national reckoning over traumas past and present. But in Richmond, where a 21-foot figure of Robert E. Lee towered over the city for more than a century, officials say no amount of government pleading produced a candidate interested in dismantling the city's many monuments during the tense and sometimes violent days of summer 2020. Except for Mr. Henry. He and his general contracting company, Team Henry Enterprises, have hauled away 15 pieces of Confederate statuary in Richmond and a total of 23 monuments across the southeast in less than 2 years. Well, good on him. He could publish in a book the racist tropes that he's been called, whilst doing this work. These things belong in a museum. Yeah, I mean the statue toppling is almost like it's a bit like putting the flag in the moon, isn't it? It's that moment at which you say the city has been taken, the regime has fallen, and it's the same with putting the flag in the moon. Man has landed on the moon. It's a momentous, it's a moment in history. And we look at obviously the Saddam Hussein statues toppling, but also the statues of former Soviet leaders, Nazi leaders. We've seen all of this over history. And that's right. And also, sports teams changing their names. I mean, anything that kind of that turns its back on the racist or bigoted or segregated past, So that's the New York Times for us this morning, which is very interesting on this Monday. It's the 18th of April, by the way. Just in case you were wondering, what the hell's going on? Kristin's in Florida and has just joined us. Kristin, any statues been toppled in Florida? I doubt it very much. Stacey says Russia stinks. Well, yeah, I'd say that Putin stinks and the Russian military stink, but I wouldn't say Russia stinks. I think Russia is a rather wonderful place. I was actually just looking at some photographs of my trip to Russia in 1993. Who was in charge in 1993? Wasn't that Mikhail Gorbachev? Must have been. I think I would have felt safe going there under Gorbachev's reign, but I wouldn't feel safe necessarily going there now. You're probably not even allowed to go there now, Who was it? It could have been Yeltsin, but I thought wasn't Yeltsin... I don't know. Yeltsin came after Gorbachev, didn't he? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. It was Yeltsin. Yeah. Gorbachev was before Yeltsin. Anyway, that's the New York Times. Let's jump on to the Ithaca Journal now. They lead with cop disciplinary records still elusive. This is 2 years after roadblock repealed, legal challenges stall process. Ukrainians defy deadline to surrender in Mariupol. A photograph of Volodymyr Zelensky in his nightly address to the nation on Saturday. He called the West to send more heavy weapons immediately if there's any chance of saving the city, adding that Russia is deliberately trying to destroy everyone who is there. Yep, that's what they're trying to do. Regulators to review nursing home deaths as well. Federal regulators will review the official tally of COVID-19 deaths at one of the nation's largest nursing home chains. Do you know, I was thinking, Carla, isn't it crazy how when the pandemic started and we were in the thick of the pandemic, we talk about, what would it be like when this pandemic ends? Will it ever end? Will it ever end? And it's kind of ended. I know that obviously the numbers are still pretty high, but in terms of it not being something to be scared of anymore, because we're all vaccinated, hopefully, and we're all, the therapeutics are in place, the pills, they're not using ventilators and suffocating people anymore. I think there's more understanding of the virus, and it kind of means that we as a race have learned to live with coronavirus. Which kind of means that, the pandemic is over and now it's endemic. And so when we spoke about what it might be like, because, I took my kids to a store yesterday and for the first time I didn't put masks on them. I wore a mask, but I didn't put masks on the kids. First time in the store. And they were like, we're not wearing masks. I'm like, I know. Kind of cool, isn't it? I still wear a mask everywhere. Just have to. The Buffalo News this morning, remote workers usher in new age of office space. Local companies look to desk reservations and other ideas. This is independent health workforce has been mainly remote since the pandemic began. And the company's decided to keep it that way. Fried Maxic renovated its office space to make it better suited to employees who largely work remotely and come in only periodically. Yeah, desk reservations, that's a good idea, isn't it? The idea that, you like hot desking, you'd come in and, use a desk for a period of time. I personally don't see why you would want to go in at all. Why would you want to go to work? For what reason would you need to go into work if you can still do your job and get paid from home? I just don't get it. Oh yeah, to steal the stationery and to do the photocopying of your personal documents. And also to flirt with Dave. And to get some free Kit Kats and fill up your water bottle. Come on, why else would you want to go to work? It doesn't make any sense. The pandemic, if it's done anything, is it's kind of, it's basically given us this opportunity to rethink our stupid behavior. Getting on a train for like an hour and a half and having to pay like $7,000 a year for a ticket. In England, where I'm from, people are literally at the mercy of this ticket, this train ticket, which is ever increasing in price. 5, 6, 7, 8,000 pounds. And you know something? For that money, they don't get a seat. They don't even get a seat. That is the price you pay for the privilege of standing with your face in someone's armpit for 2 hours each day. And you physically shut down, like you emotionally shut down, because it's so disgusting traveling in a smelly carriage that's so overcrowded. Canada still moving forward with tax that could hit American vacation homes, it says. It says the Canadian government continues to move forward with its plan to slap a 1% annual tax on the value of underused residential properties, thereby threatening plenty of Buffalo area residents who own vacation homes in Ontario with new annual levies. Yes, while Canadian officials made clear several months ago that seasonal homes are not winterized, they'd be exempt from the tax, the Canadian plan continues to worry both Americans who own properties in Canada and sympathetic politicians in southern Ontario. There it is. It's very interesting. Very interesting. So, I mean, I honestly think that vacation homes, again, we're talking about like changing things up, vacation homes, now that we have Airbnb, to me just seem like a waste of money. You can now basically go and have a much nicer vacation home that it doesn't belong to you, that you don't have to pay these taxes on, where you just show up, go and have a great time, and then retreat. Is there something psychological about ownership and feeling like you've made it or you're successful if you own multiple homes? Very interesting to me. As COVID waves come and go, risks become part of everyday life. On the front of the Buffalo News, this is kind of what I've just been saying. It says, like it or not, choose your own adventure period of the pandemic is upon us. Mask mandates have fallen. Some free testing sites have closed. Whatever parts of the US were still trying to collectively quell the pandemic have largely turned their focus away from community advice. Now, even as case numbers begin to climb and more infections go unreported, the onus has fallen on individual Americans to decide how much risk they and their neighbors face from the coronavirus and what, if anything, to do about it. So for many people, the threats posed by COVID have eased dramatically over the 2 years of the pandemic. Vaccines slash the risk of being hospitalized or dying. Powerful new antiviral pills can keep vulnerable people from deteriorating. But not all Americans can count on the same protection. Millions of people with weakened immune systems do not benefit from vaccines. It says here 2/3 of Americans and more than 1/3 of those 65 and over have not received the critical security of a booster shot, with the most worrisome rates among Black and Hispanic people. So, that's still the reality, It's still the reality. And finally, Buffalo's new police commissioner takes aim at gun violence. Yes, in the pre-dawn hours of the Joseph Gramaglia of the day, Joseph Gramaglia was sworn in as Buffalo's 42nd commissioner. A crisis unfolded at an apartment building on Hertel Avenue. A man called 911 saying someone was trying to kill him. When Buffalo patrol officers arrived, they saw he had a knife. The officers tried to calm the man down while backing away, but the man lunged towards them, and 2 of the officers opened fire. That was shown in body camera footage released to the public 2 days later. And the new police chief, 10 days later, made good on a promise to University District Council member Rashid Wyatt to appear at a town hall meeting to address residents' questions about crime and policing. I mean, this guy's literally only been on the job for like 5 minutes, and then he's having to deal with these 2 high-profile incidents. Gun violence has exploded, he said, across the city and the nation. And yet there is still no appetite from Congress to bring in any kind of gun control. Nothing. That's the reality of America, You take the risk of being shot by a colleague or family member, stranger, or even the police. But there's no desire for legislation. I mean, the guy that shot all those people in Brooklyn in the subway station last week, they were able to identify him because of the gun. He had a registered firearm. I know he gave himself in, but they were able to connect him and the weapon. I mean, even that surely should be an essential law, that in every state you have to register your weapons. Apparently not. Let's look to the Lincoln Journal-Star now. Limiting barriers for diabetics is the headline. Some Nebraskans can get a zero copay for insulin under insurers' move. Well, this is good, isn't it? Over the past several years, Congress has considered measures that would cap out-of-pocket costs of insulin, which more than 7 million Americans with diabetes need to survive. In their latest attempt, the U.S. House of Representatives has just passed a bill that will cap insulin costs for many people with insurance, including Medicare, at $35 a month. Now, an effort to craft a similar measure is underway in the Senate, although its fate isn't yet known. In the meantime, 15 states, starting with Colorado in 2013, have enacted caps of their own, after ongoing concerns that the high costs of the drug is causing people to skip doses or ration it. On the 1st of January, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Nebraska began offering a $0 cost share for preferred insulins to members with diabetes who are covered under a fully insured employer group health plan. Blue Cross's Vice President of Pharmacy and Clinical Operations said the insurer, like others, has been watching the sizable increases in brand-name drugs, including insulin, year after year, and they decided to take the cost off the table for members starting this year with insulin. He said, "We decided it was a good thing for them and for us to go to the $0 insulin copay for all of our insured members starting this year." This year? You're like 50 years too late, my friends. It's just not good enough, you know? Insulin, you know, people who have type 1 diabetes and need insulin, it's not their fault, right? It's a genetic condition. It's part of their DNA. They didn't do it because they ate too many cookies. Insulin should be free. It just should be. Completely free. Not even a $35 copay. It's a joke. Some advice for tax day laggards. Oh, it's tax day today. Yes, millions of Americans wait until the last minute to file their taxes, and this year is no exception. Monday is tax day, the federal deadline for individual tax filings and payments, and the IRS will receive tens of millions of last-minute filings electronically and through paper forms. As of the 8th of April, the IRS had received more than 103 million returns for this tax season, and it had issued more than 63 million refunds worth more than $204 billion. For comparison, last year more than 169 million people completed an income tax return by the end of the year. That probably leaves nearly 40% of this year's taxpayers still unaccounted for, with many scrambling to submit their documents by Monday. There we go. Broadband expansion hits speed bumps, it says. This is also on the front of the Lincoln Journal-Star. It says, in the remote Vermont community of Victory, town clerk Tracy Martell says she's regularly frustrated watching a spinning circle on her computer while she tries to complete even the most basic municipal chores online. Fast internet would be really good, said Martell, whose community of about 70 was one of the last in Vermont to get electricity almost 60 years ago. The DSL service she now has works for basic internet, but it it works, but it can be spotty, and it doesn't allow users to access all of the benefits of the interconnected world. About 5 miles away as the bird flies in the neighboring community along Miles Pond in the town of Concord, a new fiber optic line is beginning to bring true high-speed internet to residents of the remote area known as the Northeast Kingdom. I'm looking forward to high-speed internet, streaming TV said Concord resident John Gilchrist, as a crew ran fiber optic cable to his home earlier this year. The fiber optic cable that is beginning to serve the remote part of Concord will one day serve Victory. It's being provided through NEK Broadband, a utility of nearly 50 Vermont towns working to bring high-speed internet service to the most remote parts of the state. They say the group's business plan calls for offering services to all potential customers within 5 years, but given current supply constraints and shortage of trained technicians, she's beginning to think that goal isn't achievable. I think our build will take 7 to 10 years, she said. Well, do you know, I just got fiber broadband for the first time in my life. I'm now talking to you with fiber. To say it's life-changing is an understatement. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Because it's not just the speed, it's the quality of the line as well. And it means that, if you have a lot of devices, now, please don't be offended when I say this, but I probably have somewhere between 20 and 30 devices on in my house at any one time that require an internet connection. They're just all on. I have Amazon speakers, I have Echo shows, I have TV and Apple TV, I have lights all connected to the Wi-Fi, I have several computers. They're all on. They're all working all the time. And now there's less congestion. It just works. But the speed is insane. And I'm talking about the upload speed, because I send big files. And, I used to send a file that was like, 3 or 4 gigabytes. And it would take about 45 minutes to an hour to send that file. Now, 2 to 3 minutes to send a huge file, gigantic. So it's wonderful. I mean, hopefully the picture quality that you're seeing me on right now, is excellent. And that is thanks to the fiber broadband. It won't get better than this. Oh, it's better for your health. Why? Because you spend less time getting stressed out that things aren't loading and stuff. That's interesting. Well, it's definitely better for my health. It's also better for my bank balance. It's cheaper. I'm paying less for fiber optic broadband. I'm paying $65 a month versus $80 a month for very slow spectrum. Copper. It's wonderful. Okay, let's get back to some of your messages now. Thank you very much for these. Marley has joined us. Ancient Panther is here. Oh, it's Molly. Hi, Molly. Oh, Molly! Welcome back. In Alaska, right? Blue Condor is here. Magenta Gopher. Kristen. Yeah, welcome. Molly, I'm so pleased you're with us because, you were very, very interesting last time. And it's great to have you back on the show. What else do we have here? Getting back on track, a story about Veterans Treatment Court, a shining example in helping those who've served. Now, this is a third-floor courtroom on a recent Wednesday. A group chatted like old friends as they waited for the judge to come in. The American flag and U.S. Armed Forces flag behind the bench hinted this wasn't a typical court hearing. So did the tray of baked goods for the gallery. Retired District Judge John Colburn came in smiling and led the group in the Pledge of Allegiance to start the week's Lancaster County Veterans Treatment Court, which this month reached its 5-year anniversary of its inaugural ceremony. Since then, the court has graduated 18 veterans who'd got into scrapes with the law, were looking at potential jail or prison time, but were diverted to the problem-solving court, meant to help them get back on track. I mean, this is a wonderful story. What a wonderful story! So far, only one has been convicted on a new charge. The second, the first to graduate from the program, has a pending felony case. 10 others are currently working their way through, among them Marines, Army and Navy veterans, according to Mindy Millan Groves, the coordinator. This year, the Veterans Court and Lancaster County Adult Drug Court were both chosen by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals and U.S. Department of Justice to serve as a national mentor treatment courts to help new and growing treatment courts. I've never heard of a treatment court. This is wonderful. They say this program is a shining example of serving those who have served us and ensuring our military veterans and service members receive the treatment and benefits they have earned. And as a mentor court, this program is helping to transform our justice system and leading veterans who might otherwise be incarcerated into lives of hope and healing. Wonderful. So there we go. That's the Lincoln Journal-Star this morning. Shane's dropped in from Illinois. Welcome, Shane. Nice to see you. Let's go to the Omaha World Herald now and see what they have to offer. Hang on a second. Let me just sort out these windows. So many windows, so little time. So many windows, and so little time. There it is. Just a click away. Metro calls for significant expansion of public transit. This is the agency expanding services to underserved parts of Omaha under the ambitious plan. Yeah, public transport in America really is, it's like the airports are great. You can fly anywhere. But, buses and trains, not so good. Some countries like Japan, they pride themselves on having the best rail service in the world. They love it. They're so proud of their rolling stock. And it's not quite the same here. I do enjoy going to Union Station, though, sometimes here in Los Angeles and just watching people going about their business. It's kind of fun. It's a wonderful station. States scale back on food stamps as prices soar. Month by month, more of the roughly 40 million Americans who get help buying groceries through the federal food stamp program are seeing their benefits plunge even as the nation struggles with the biggest increase in food costs in decades. The payments to low-income individuals and families are dropping as governors end COVID-19 disaster declarations and opt out of an ongoing federal program. Oh, sorry, I had to sneeze, but I couldn't get the mute button in time. Well, I had to take the cough button out. Look, it's not even plugged in anymore because it hisses. It hisses too much. So I can't reach it, so now I have to hit the mute button. Whew, that was a big sneeze. I can actually hear your fridge vibrating, and it really frustrates me. I also get very frustrated the way you wind the cable around your headphones, because it's gonna ruin it. And the same with the microphone. Yeah. This is how. Well, look at that wire down there that's all twisted like that. Yeah, that. It's just like you're halving the life. You take the wire like this, and you just gather it up and you give it a little twist every time, and you make nice little circles, and you put it next to the band. That's all you do. If you wrap it around the headphones, you're just gonna reduce the life of the headphones and the cable. I'm sorry to lecture, but it's very important. It's very important. I notice everything. That's part of my curse. My curse is noticing everything. Yeah, see that? It's not good. And the buzz on the fridge, that's driving me crazy. My fridge buzzes as well. I need to talk to my landlord. None of the knobs on my oven are attached to the oven anymore. So I can't turn the gas up and down or on and off because they're all broken. They're just rotten. It's such an old, cheap old oven. But that's the great thing about renting is that it's not your problem. And I love that. Shane says, bless you. Thank you. I'm sorry about the sneeze. That was a big one. I just couldn't reach the mute button in time. What if I press it? The problem is I have to be on the active window, and I'm not because I'm looking at the news. There's not. Now I'm belching. It's not your problem. I'm just saying. We were talking about food stamps. The payments to low-income individuals and families are dropping as governors end COVID-19 disaster declarations and opt out of an ongoing federal program that made their states eligible for dramatic increases in SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps. The U.S. Department of Agriculture began offering the increased benefit in April 2020 in response to surging unemployment after the COVID-19 pandemic swept over the country. The result is that, depending on the politics of a state, individuals and families in need find themselves eligible for significantly different levels of help buying food. Yeah. It's not easy. This is a real thing. Relentless winds have scientists taking notice, it says in the days immediately after he worked in a frightening Nebraska dust storm. State Patrol Lieutenant Michael Court said he continued to find dust and grit on himself and in his cruiser. This is interesting. They're trying to work out why it's windier than usual. I'll tell you why. Carbon emissions. Carbon emissions. Make more wind. Carbon emissions make more wind. Climate changes. Wind changes. It says, from annoying to costly and deadly, strong winds have been bedeviling residents in the Great Plains for months. If you've been wondering whether it's been windier than normal, the answer is yes. Many people are noticing it, said Gannon Rush, a climatologist at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. There's been quite a bit of chatter in the meteorological and climatological community about trying to figure out how much windier this year has been. Figuring it out is the operative phrase because the wind is a particularly difficult area of study. Interesting. Strong winds are a normal characteristic of winter and spring in the Great Plains, so breezy conditions are no surprise this time of year. What has been surprising, though, has been the strength and relentlessness of the wind. Yes, based on data from 1960 forward, eastern Nebraska is averaging its second windiest year to date and second windiest spring to date. I mean, what else can it be? The climate changes and so extreme weather changes. I mean, that's what it is, surely. Don't call me Shirley. I just... Leslie Nielsen, yeah. I actually went to see Leslie Nielsen in a play at the Richmond Theatre once. It was a one-man show of a very serious play called Clarence Darrow, who's a very famous public defender in America. And he was an old guy, he was like 75, and he did like 3 hours of non-stop dialogue on his own, and it was very impressive. The tragedy, though, is that, you think of Leslie Nielsen as just a comedy actor, and to see him not do comedy is not much fun. You're just like desperate for him to do comedy. He used to live up here, actually, not far from here. Not anymore, though. But somebody pointed out where his house used to be. And it's been replaced with one of these giant mansions now, with an infinity pool. Well, I think comedians make the best actors. I think a comedian, by definition, is somebody who has to learn how to be natural on stage and still do a script. Because, a set, a comedy set, is just a script, right? So you have to deliver it like you're just talking. You don't deliver it like you're acting. And that's why I think stand-up comedians, are the best actors, because they have learned to deliver words in a completely naturalistic fashion, often without any training. Whereas actors who have been institutionalized in Stanislavski or whatever the acting school is, have a method. And the method is flawed because it's completely unnatural. How can you have a method that teaches you to be natural? Just be natural, just say the words. Yeah, I think I became a better actor after I started just doing chat like this, Because if somebody puts a script in front of me, then I'll just say it the same way as I would do if I was just saying stuff off the top of my head. And hopefully you wouldn't notice the difference. Figuring it out is the operative phrase. Because wind is a particularly difficult area of study. I did it just then. I read a little bit from the wind article. And I hoped that you wouldn't even notice that I had switched into reading from just talking. Because researchers around the world are tackling ways to gather data. Oh, I did it again. You get the picture. Anyway. Whereas an actor might be like, oh, and so, figuring it out is the operative phrase, because wind. And you'd be like, yeah, I don't think anybody talks like that. Apart from Brian Blessed, of course. Gordon's alive. So, Dapper B just joined us. Thank you, Dapper B, in New York City. Lots of no names. Kevin's here as well. Don't forget, you guys, you can subscribe if you've got an Echo Show device. Molly, Kristin, Shane, Kevin, Magenta Gopher. Just press the subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and subscribe to the show, and then you'll be reminded about it, and you can join in every day. Where do we go next? I think we went to the Valley News for New Hampshire next. Things are not so great is the headline. Upper Valley organizations that provide charitable food to people in need are warning the increase in demand they've seen lately may point to broader economic challenges as some COVID-19 pandemic relief programs end, as inflation, high prices, fuel prices persist. I've been predicting this for years. Food shortages. I've been predicting this for years, and it's happening now. This is not something that is like, oh, this could happen if we're not careful. This is now. And there's going to be less food to choose from. Like all of the stuff that you thought was like yummy and delicious, your favorite things, they won't be there anymore. In America, you won't be able to get scallops. They're just not going to exist. Oysters, they're just not going to exist. Because the sea is too acidic. Because of climate change. And this is the point, isn't it? We are constantly desiring to have our needs met, to get our favorite things. And yet, when somebody starts to say you can't have that now, it's not available, we're going to be like, what's going on? Well, we've brought this upon ourselves, I'm telling you. You just got to trust me. I predicted this. I mean, a lot of people predicted this, but I'm just saying, it's like, this is a thing. City moves to privatise transfer station. This is also on the Valley News. It said the City Council last week took another step towards privatising operation of the city's transfer station recycling centre with the approval of proposal to seek out a company to take over management of the facility. The council also asked John McLean, interim city manager, to research the cost of permanently shutting down the facility. No cost to residents who would have to take garbage and recyclables to the Casella transfer station in Newport. That sounds like an awful lot of work, doesn't it? Sounds like an awful lot of work. What else on the Valley News here? The old Valley News front. Oh, it's a kind of coverage of Elizabeth Betty Edson. She died this year, and she was one of those 91-year-olds who was a bit of a famous, bit of a star. She was a pastor of the Sharon Congregational Church for 13 years, bit of a star of the local community. So there's a little reference to her there on the front of the Valley News. Are we doing our little quiz today, Carla, where we ask people which the headlines were? Are we doing that somewhere? Okay. All right, let's go to the news press in Florida now, because, we love Florida so much. It's such a great place. And it's so free there, you can really do anything you want. Whatever you want to do in Florida, you can do. You can have an abortion. You can get access to, if you're a female, you have access to, anything you need. You can, if you're trans, you can take part in sports, of the team that you choose to play for. I mean, oh no, hang on a second. You can't do any of those things. What was I thinking? Yeah, you can't even vote Democrat because they'll just change your vote to Republican. Bear that in mind. On the front of the news press this morning, the headline. Let's have a look. Is new district lines anger Democrats? Yes, it says critics say DeSantis' demand for congressional map eliminates black representation for GOP gains. When 80-year-old Sam Palmer was growing up in Gadsden County, few black Floridians were eligible to vote. Not in those segregation days. Because of racial violence and restrictive voting laws, there was only 7 black voters in a county of almost 11,000 black people. Palmer just turned 18. Now, as president of the NAACP, the state's only majority black county, Palmer fears he's seeing a form of that history of disenfranchisement threatening to repeat itself. What I'm hearing out of the Tallahassee out of Tallahassee is that we can pay taxes, but we don't have representation. The governor wants to turn North Florida Republican red, and if he does, we're going to be an outcast again. Yes, Florida lawmakers are set to convene on Tuesday at the Capitol to redraw boundaries for the state's 28 congressional districts. Governor Ron DeSantis last month vetoed an earlier redistricting plan approved by the Republican-led legislature, condemning it as unconstitutional because of what he called racial gerrymandering. Instead, DeSantis has advanced plans with more districts likely to elect Republicans to Congress from Florida. I mean, this is very interesting to me. You know, the fact that they're allowed to do this, they're allowed to basically change the outcome of an election in advance, rig an election effectively, you know, and the Republicans were the ones that were like complaining about voter fraud, and meanwhile it's not even the voters that are committing the fraud, it's the actual lawmakers themselves. We should just call it lawmaker fraud, not voter fraud. It's just fraud. Red tide debate may soon be settled. They say it took just decades before smoking was recognized as a cancer trigger. It's taken until recently for science to firmly link nitrogen pollution to the persistence of red tide. But a new University of Florida study with 2 non-profit research partners shows clear ties between nitrogen from human activities and the longevity and severity of the saltwater harmful algal blooms, published in the academic journal Science and the Total Environment. The report's mouthful of a name is nitrogen-enriched discharges from a highly managed watershed intensifier, red tide, blooms in southwest Florida. 2 of its key findings are Calahootachi River discharges and nitrogen input systematically intensifies blooms, and I hope you're writing this down, and anthropogenic influence extends upstream to Lake Okeechobee and the Kissimmee Basin. I mean, this might be as well be an alien language. Do you know what I mean? They're basically saying that what comes from the land all the way up to Lake O can make things worse downstream and on the coast when there's a bloom. So there you go. They've worked it out. Finally. And they have these red tide alerts. You know, nitrogen from human activities makes red tides worse, is the story there. Okay, let's go to the Florida Times-Union next. They lead with families remember Doolittle Raiders. 80 years later, mission still an unbelievable feat. This is a reference to Doolittle Raider Ed Horton. There's a photograph of him standing in front of a B-25 Mitchell bomber like the one he flew during the 1942 raid on Japan. So there we go. Interesting. Next up, Florida COVID hospitalization number hits pandemic low. Key coronavirus statistic hit a new pandemic low again last week. New federal data shows hospitals across Florida tended to an average of 674 COVID-positive patients each day during the week ending Friday. There we go. And what else do we have here? What else? DeSantis map plan boosts the GOP is the headline. And this is more coverage of that same story about that man, Sam Palmer. Yeah, same story. Okay, so there we go. That's how the Florida Times-Union presents itself on this day. And just a reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison's Good Morning. So start your morning from 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern, with 2 hours of silly fun and games. That's Haley and Allison and producer Will. They have trivia and the answers to your burning questions and the news you might have missed. They're followed by Live Every Day with Liv Harrison from 5 a.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. You can join Liv every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning to celebrate the little things in life in an extraordinary way. Candid conversations, lots of laughs, and plenty of coffee will fuel you. I think it should be will fuel her and encourage her to live every day. And on air just before me is Get On Up with Jam and Renee. Wake up on the West Coast with Community and Conscious Living. Jam and Renee have it all covered, from what people think to who's wearing what. You'll leave entertained and enlightened every day and learn how to pay it all forward. Yes, so that's how Backchannel looks here. And then after me, of course, is your pal and my pal, Hal, here on Backchannel. Okay, let's have a little look at some more of your messages. Solid Pelican has popped in. Endurable Margay, Kevin, Dapper B, Shane, Christine, Ancient Panther, Molly, Magenta Gopher, Blue Condor, Kristin. Thank you for spending your morning with Backchannel, or your lunchtime indeed. Let's have a look at the Akron Beacon Journal now as we jump back to the morning newspapers and see what's happening there. ODOT workers describe perils is the headline. Irony is hard to miss, says Matt Brunning, Press Secretary of the Ohio Department of Transportation. It says only 2 days into into an annual campaign on work zone safety. It says Brunning found himself in a death grip on his steering wheel, struggling to keep control after being sideswiped in a construction zone on Interstate 70 in Columbus. He was returning to an event to highlight work zone safety, and a motorist fleeing from police struck him. The speeder had been going 74 miles an hour, nearly 30 over the reduced speed limit there. So, yes, talking about the effects of being on the wrong end of a road traffic accident. LGBTQ Centre opens. This is good. Portraits and biographies hang on the century-old walls. Poet Audre Lorde, musician Johnny Mathis, author James Baldwin, all of them are black and all of them are LGBTQ+. It says when 21-year-old Kenneth Holman walks into the new Bayard Rustin Resource Centre, he says it feels like home. Isn't that nice? He's bisexual, says he was experiencing domestic abuse but has been coming weekly to the resource centre for a month because of the sense of community and its focus on advocating for black gay people. He said, seeing people like me is important. Being black can already be hard, but being black and gay doubles down. I have to fight every day to be myself. I know I can come here and it feels like family. Isn't that lovely? So that's Akron hoping to create safe space for black, gay people. Hummingbirds completing long journey back to Ohio. Yes, little birds are being seen across the Buckeye State all week. I think they're migrating, which is nice because there's too many of them here. Canal Fulton Clinton soldiers receive Purple Heart honors. That's nice as well. Anything else on the front of the Akron? No, I don't think so. Should we do our US news update? It's the little podcast that I make that comes out once a day. Once a day! Enables you to catch up with what's happening across the United States. There's always something to learn and to listen to and to discover. So we'll play you that, and if you like the sound of it, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It's called the US News Update. And here it is. It's Monday, April 18. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. US border authorities arrested 210,000 migrants attempting to cross the border with Mexico in March, the highest monthly total in 2 decades. And underscoring challenges in the coming months for President Joe Biden. The March total is a 24% increase from the same month a year earlier, when 169,000 migrants were picked up at the border, the start of a rise in migration that left thousands of unaccompanied children stuck in crowded Border Patrol stations for days while they awaited placement in overwhelmed government-run shelters. Biden, who took office in January 2021, pledged to reverse many of the hardline immigration policies of his Republican predecessor Donald Trump, but has struggled both operationally and politically with high numbers of attempted crossings. Republicans, who hope to gain control of the U.S. Congress in the November midterm elections, say Biden's rollback of Trump-era policies has encouraged more illegal immigration. Meanwhile, the Biden administration on Friday said it has resumed plans for oil and gas development on federal lands, a move that could break a pledge Joe Biden made while campaigning for president. The plan calls for the government to lease fewer acres for drilling than initially proposed, charge steeper royalties to oil and gas companies, and assess the climate impact of developing the acreage. The proposal was quickly denounced by several environmental groups, with one calling it a reckless failure of climate leadership. Oil industry groups praised the move, but said it did not go far enough. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the US news update. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the show on this Monday morning. It's the 18th of April, 2022, and we are working our way through the morning papers. Mr. K's just dropped in. Shane, Shot Solid Pelican are our latest chatters here on Backchannel, so feel free to jump in and subscribe with the new subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner of your Echo Show device, if that's how you're listening this morning. Looking through the papers, program to pay for drivers' ed. It says Canton Police hoping to help disadvantaged teens get licenses and secure employment. Republican LaRose takes a political turn in 2022. This is the Ohio Secretary of State. He's built a political career on being a common-sense Republican willing to reach across the aisle, a brand he could bring into a challenge with U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown in 2024, or in seeking another statewide office in 2026. And also photograph of 52-year-old East Canton woman earning a diploma with the help of McDonald's, which is kind of interesting. She achieved what she called the only thing on her bucket list with the help from her employer. The mother of three became a high school graduate through McDonald's Archway to Opportunity program. She said, I dropped out in 1987. I got pregnant. I wanted to get married and be a mum. I put aside my diploma. I married my high school sweetheart and we're still married. But she wanted to go back to school. And she was recruited by her eldest daughter, who was working at McDonald's. She said, we need help. You need to go back to work. And one day, while working in 2019, she overheard her general manager talking to another employee about the Archways to Opportunity program. And I said, sign me up. She was enrolled in online classes within 5 days. So that's good. It's nice to know that McDonald's is doing something other than just serving food with little nutrition. You know? I was thinking about this yesterday. Where was I? I was in the 99-cent store, and they sell a lot of food in the 99-cent store, and there is zero nutrition in any of it. Isn't it interesting that we can buy food that is just like stuff? It doesn't actually give us any nutrition. It just, it just kind of makes us fat, really. But in terms of, being beneficial to our system, nothing. I need to change my ways. I need to go back to drinking juices and being a little bit more thoughtful about my vitamin intake, Need to really up my vitamin game. Well, I do mainly just eat vegetables and a little fish. I drove yesterday to a Guatemalan taco restaurant. Oh, it's a ceviche restaurant and taco, as they say here. And it was about a 30-minute drive to go to this tiny little restaurant with 6 little tables in it, and the owner who just couldn't stop talking. And it was rather wonderful. In fact, it was completely wonderful. The food was some of the best food I've ever eaten. And they did a fish taco, which was on another level. Really quite wonderful. Okay, let's go to the Cincinnati Enquirer next. They lead this morning with Kentucky Republican schism is unsettling. The meeting at the library here one recent Monday featured a cornucopia of conspiracy theories. Not only was the 2020 presidential election stolen, but so was the 2019 Kentucky governor's election. Facebook and Google are creations of the U.S. Department of Defense. Even the next election's already predetermined by foreign governments and other entities if no one steps in. The hundreds in attendance were there for the Restore Election Integrity Tour 2.0, which the Kentucky Secretary of State, it says, a Republican of the state's bipartisan Board of Elections has warned was promoting false claims. And so, it's very interesting to me that now what they're doing is they're basically creating a false narrative that suggested that some places were, not some places, some aspects of the election were fraudulent, and yet there was no proof of any fraud at all. The whole thing is like a conspiracy theory. It's propaganda. But they're now creating a whole new level of cover to back up these claims by having these types of Restore Election Integrity Tour 2.0 event. I mean, there was never a problem with election integrity in the first place. So to restore it is irrelevant. At least 8 candidates for county or state office attended, highlighting a schism within the Republican Party in northern Kentucky. The event was even hosted by the Boone County Republican Party. The party is so divided that the chairs of the 2 local parties are running against incumbents, and more Trump-friendly candidates are being recruited to primary long-time GOPers. This is happening in the backyard of Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell, nominally the most powerful Republican in Washington, D.C., and the man who has helped build the state's GOP over the past 45 years in elected office. It's often his allies, considered by some Republicans more establishment, who are facing challenges. McConnell's office had no immediate comment. Well, McConnell needs to go, let's be honest. I mean, he's a really bad person. But can you imagine being in office for 45 years? You basically are... For 45 years, he has basically ruled over this state and made it so poor. Kentucky really is a real struggling state. And if you're the governor, if you're the representative for 45 years, it's your fault that the state is doing so badly. And yet he's so rich. Story here, how bullying death led to school reform. Yeah, program CPS is adopting calls for community changes. It says there's a slab of concrete to the right of Carson School's main entrance in West Price Hill, the neighborhood of Cincinnati. Principal Terrace Thomas envisions a small library there with a garden. It's a center that will be a memorial bench bearing a photo of Gabriel Tay. Gabriel was bullied repeatedly at the school before he took his own life 5 years ago at the age of 8. What? An 8-year-old committed suicide. His parents said he would come home with injuries that school officials either did not explain or lied about in the months leading up to his death. I mean, this might be the worst story I've ever heard in my life. I mean, how is this even possible that an 8-year-old is pushed to do this? I don't even know how he does it. What does he do? He's the most beautiful little black boy you've ever seen in your life. Absolutely beautiful. It's unfathomable to me. Unfathomable. I just don't get it. So there we go. That's the Cincinnati Enquirer. The last of our newspapers on the old newspaper review. Nice to end on a happy note, don't you think? Let's have a little look at some of the newspapers that we've been reviewing. I have a few little questions for you. It's like a little quiz that you're welcome to join in on. Young Otters joined us, Sleek Buffalo, Jordan, Mr. K, Shane, Solid Pelican, welcome, all of you. Kristen's in Florida. Just a few little quick questions to see how you do with this little quiz. And you can just reply to me by talking to your Echo Show. Wake it up, say, and then your message. Or, of course, you can type at backchannel.tv. In which state does a Veterans Treatment Court lead as a shining example in helping those who've served? That was in the Lincoln Journal-Star. What was the state where that Veterans Treatment Court was leading as a shining example in helping those who've served? We talked about it a little while ago. Any ideas? If you can let me know, the prize is no prize other than a huge amount of celebration from me and cheers and applause and kindness and thought and you'll get to come back tomorrow and enjoy the show tomorrow if you so care to, No? Okay. And then the next question is, in which US state is an extensive expansion of public transport about to take place? It's described as an 8-year ambitious plan. This story, I won't tell you which newspaper it was because it'll give it away, but it was in one of the newspapers. In which US state is an extensive expansion of public transport about to take place is the question. It's described as an 8-year ambitious plan. And the final question in our quiz, this is our interactive quiz where you can interact by interacting with me. All you have to do is wake up your Echo Show, say the word say, and then your message to interact. In which state was there a story about a safe space for black gay people following the opening of a new LGBTQ+ centre? So these are the 3 questions. You can hit me up with the answers. I'm just looking for the names of 3 places. In which state does a Veterans Treatment Court lead as a shining example in helping those who've served? The second one, in which US state is an extensive expansion of public transport about to take place? And finally, in which state was there a story about a safe space for black gay people following the opening of a new LGBT+ centre? So answers on a postcard to our mailing address, or if you want to do it quicker, then just wake up your Echo Show, say the word say, and then your message. We're looking for the names of 3 states. And then if you are looking or watching on YouTube, you can follow the show there. You can also send me a message via the comments section, and we'll see that right here too. So there we go. That's how it goes. That's our interactive quiz, which we call the Interactive News Quiz. And we do every day here on the Back Channel. Okay, let's go back to some more of the subjects that we were going to talk about. I wanted to talk about the former Missouri governor, Eric Greitens, whose ex-wife recently accused him of physical abuse, says he will not drop his political comeback bid for the U.S. Senate. Yes, what a nice man. Eric Greitens stepped aside as Missouri's governor in 2018 amid a scandal involving accusations of blackmail, bondage, and sexual assault. It says, as he attempts a political comeback this year with a U.S. Senate bid, his ex-wife has said Greitens physically abused her and one of their children. It once took far less to end a political career, but at a recent meeting of the St. Charles County Patcham Club in a largely Republican area of suburban St. Louis, GOP voters engaged in genuine debate over whether they'd support him in the August primary. Bob Sullentrup, the club's 70-year-old president, dismissed Greitens as damaged goods. He's going to get creamed, he said. That baggage will follow him. Others, including several women, weren't so sure. Sharon Cumnick of Weldon Springs said she'd vote for Greitens if he's the GOP nominee, noting everybody's divorce, when they want more than is offered, is contentious. Lovely. What a lot of empathy people have there. What a joyful, empathetic bunch in Missouri. So, I mean, this is really kind of an example of like where it's at. It reminds me a bit of, Donald Trump, who was, had been accused of rape by like a dozen or more people. I think it might be nearer 24 now. And yet, doesn't seem to bother him or anybody else. So, Tina Maloney, a real estate investor from St. Charles, said Greitens should stay in the race. She said, I don't think just because you're accused of something in this day and age, you should drop out. This is what they always do. citing the sexual assault allegations that emerged against Brett Kavanaugh during his Supreme Court nomination hearing. It shows character to fight. Oh, man. Is that what it's really come to? You know, there is this very kind of subservient and sexualized relationship in some parts of the country between men and women kind of supporting men, seeing men as being superior. You know, this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Did you hear what Marjorie Taylor Greene said about women the other day? Oh, you might want to play the clip, actually, Carla. This would be worth playing. You'll find it on Twitter, I think. Search Marjorie Taylor Greene, women. And she made a little speech about what it means to be a woman in this day and age. And I think it would be very interesting to see or hear why her version of what a modern woman is will not tally with what a lot of women's views of what a woman should be. The sentiment is reinforcing Greeton's refusal to leave the race, posing the latest test of the GOP's openness to men accused of physical or sexual abuse. Greeton is convinced that by casting himself as a conservative fighter in the mold of former President Trump, he can win the Republican nomination for Missouri's open U.S. Senate seat. Even though many of his political benefactors abandoned him and the party's establishment wishes he would just go away. "I'm going to win," he said in an email, calling his ex-wife's accusations false and a political hit job. Trump, they say, is perhaps the GOP's best example that candidates can power through the abuse allegations. He won the 2016 campaign despite accusations of sexual misconduct by more than a dozen women in this year's midterms. Herschel Walker is poised to become the GOP's nominee for a U.S. Senate seat in Georgia despite making repeated threats on his ex-wife's life. A Republican candidate for governor in Nebraska, Charles Herbster, was accused last week of groping several women. Well, maybe it's becoming like a prerequisite, to be a kind of GOP candidate. If you want to become a candidate, then you certainly have to have some kind of sexual assault allegation against you. Maybe that's going to make you more likely to win. It's a large dose of irony with this. Carla, did you have any success in finding Marjorie Taylor Greene's speech about... it was somewhere she got up and made a speech about women. Shall I see if I can find it? Let's have a look. It was pretty terrifying, I'll be honest. Yes, it was on the 5th of April. And I'll send it to you now. Here we go. I've sent it to you. Let's look to some of your messages here. Thank you very much for these. Kong Hale has dropped in. Andrew has popped in as well to see us. Young Otter and Sleek Buffalo and Mr. K. All welcome to, join us here on the Backchannel on this Monday. It's the 18th of April, 2022. Just looking at the GOP Congress people who are seeking to get elected despite having these kind of sexual misconduct allegations made against them. And I was saying that, maybe amongst some GOP people, there is this kind of attitude, this old-fashioned attitude that men are superior to women, men have a right to be abusive towards women, women just need to support their men. Do you see what I mean? This whole kind of horrendous dysfunction in heterosexual relationships that, was quite prevalent until recently, hopefully, but clearly in some circles is still very much the fashion, the way that the harmony of the relationship works, women being subservient to men and just protecting them at whatever cost, And this is really the problem these days, isn't it? That, we are living in such a divided country that there are clearly, in some parts of the country, it's okay for Marjorie Taylor Greene to get up and say that women are inferior to men. That's basically what her speech was. Women are inferior to men. And she made the case for that, And yet she's, got quite a mouth on her. And is prepared to kind of take on anybody and stand up for herself, which is commendable if what she said was true. But what she says is just garbage. Anyway, not one to repeat that garbage normally, but on this occasion, I'm just interested for you to see what a current member of Congress thinks is an acceptable way to communicate and to position herself and speak on behalf of all women and think that this is what women, how women are in this day and age. Here it is. Let's have a little look. Yeah, this is her speech.
Question, what is a woman? Because she said she's not a... I'm going to tell you right now, what is a woman? This is an easy answer. We are a creation of God. We came from Adam's rib. God created us with his hands. We may be the weaker sex, we are the weaker sex, but we are our partner, our husband's wife. We are mother. Question, what is a woman? Because she said she's not a biologist.
Made from Adam's rib, apparently. So, you are your husband's wife. That's basically what you are. I think there's a longer clip than that somewhere, but it's pretty terrifying. That this is, to her, this kind of seems normal, Anyway, my point is that in GOP circles, clearly there is not equality between the male and the female. They still see the male as superior in GOP circles, not in the real world, but in this kind of crazy fantasy world of DC politics. And that's just the way it is. I mean, obviously it's the same in the workplace, isn't it? So few CEOs of top US companies are run by women. Hardly any. It's like less than 7%. In Congress, of course, women are not represented equally, as they should be. It should be half and half. But it's not. It's like, less than 12, 15%, something like that. And then also, when it comes to relationships, there is still this kind of, as she says, this kind of desire amongst some women to feel that their role is to be the homemaker and to be the protector and to, keep stum if their husband is, sexually deviant. Just seems to be the order of the day. Cher has joined us from North Carolina. Thank you for popping in. Welcome. Nice to see you. You can subscribe. Just press the subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen of your Echo show, and we can chat there. Let's look at the latest from Dr. Ashish Jha, as Americans over 60 should get a COVID booster, says this White House official. Yes, he said there was now pretty compelling evidence that a second round of coronavirus booster vaccine would help protect older people. This is the White House's top COVID-19 response coordinator. The data out of Israel is pretty compelling for people over 60, he says. Dr. Ashish Jha said on Fox News Sunday, people who have that second booster shot 4 months after the first booster, we saw a substantial reduction not just in infections but in deaths. The FDA authorized second Pfizer and Moderna boosters for people over 50 last month, but Israel, which launched the world's first major second booster program in January, as the Omicron variant of the coronavirus swept through the world, authorized it only for people over 60. Jha also said on Sunday that getting the second booster between the age of 50 and 59 is a much closer call. Yes, Mr. Jha has kind of, come out as the new, he's the new star of the old White House COVID-19 response. This is after the last guy got fired because he was bullying everybody in the department. So, yeah, they asked him to resign, and he resigned. But he basically bullied everybody, especially the women, and they eventually kind of caught up with him. Anyway, this guy's the Dean of Brown School of Public Health, a globally recognized expert on pandemic preparedness and response. He's taking leave for temporary assignment to serve the critical federal government role. Yes, at the request of Joe Biden, Ashish Jam will serve as the next White House coronavirus response coordinator. He's succeeding Jeff Zients. Jeff Zients is a businessman who was running the White House coordination. I think the guy I'm talking about was he was like the senior doctor in the department. You know, he was like whereas Jeff Zients was not a doctor, he was an organizer. And I actually think that was a really bad idea to put just an organizer in and not a doctor, you know. Anyway, in succeeding Jeff Zients, Jar will lead the response of the entire US government to the COVID-19 pandemic while also advancing the nation's global health priorities and policies. To assume the critical role in the nation's pandemic response and advise Biden, Jar will take a short-term leave from the School of Public Health for this special assignment. Biden issued the statement a month ago announcing Zients' departure and Jar's appointment. They say Dr. Jar is one of the leading public health experts in America. He's a well-known figure to many Americans from his wise and calming public presence. And as we enter a new moment in the pandemic, executing on my national COVID-19 preparedness plan and managing the ongoing risks from COVID, Dr. Jar is the perfect person for the job, according to President Joe Biden. So that's good, isn't it? It's nice to know that there's somebody there who is, experienced. Unlike Jeff Zients, who was a businessman. He's a businessman. A reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Kate Cocker's Everyday Positivity Show is on Tuesday and Thursday now from 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, for an hour of positive good news and good vibes. And following my show every Monday through Friday is Your Pal Hal with Hal Rudnick, taking you on a tour of comedy, news and pop culture. From 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And also there's The Drive with Mario Smith, weekdays from 4 Eastern. Everyone's drive home needs a second look. Mario will make sure you are in the know. So there we go. And don't forget you can leave a review for today's show by going to backchannel.tv, hitting the Leave a Review button. And not only can you send us your thoughts on the show that way, you can also leave us suggestions for upcoming segments as well. And a reminder that you can now subscribe to this show on your Echo Show. It's a new feature, and it's applicable to visual device users only. So if you're on a visual device, whether it's your phone or the Echo, or the Echo Show, or of course the Fire tablet, I think you can do it on as well. Then you just hit the subscribe button in the bottom left corner of the screen. Okay, let's. We're going to do. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about the Pulitzer Prize winner. But before that, let me talk a little bit about Disneyland, and I also need to give you the answers to the quiz. So we've got lots to get through. It's an insane show here. It's just I can't keep up with myself. It's just so busy. You know. Let's have a little look here. Enjoying this song. Lots of no names are in. Cher, Congale, Andrew, Young Otter, Sleek Buffalo, Jordan, Mr. K, Shay, Solid Pelican, Endurable, Margay, Kevin, Dapper B, all popped in for a bit of back channel action today. Great to see you. Should we go back and do the answers to the quiz? I think that would be a good idea. I first asked you in which state does a Veterans Treatment Court lead as a shining example in helping those who've served. And the answer is, of course, Nebraska. That's right. That was the story in today's Lincoln Journal-Star. I also asked him which US state is an extensive expansion of public transport about to take place, described as an 8-year ambitious plan. The answer there was Omaha. That came from the Omaha World Herald newspaper. And then finally, in which state was there a story about a safe space for black gay people following an opening of a new LGBTQ+ center? And the answer there was Akron, Ohio. That story came from the Akron Beacon Journal. So there we go. Congratulations to you if you got all 3 right. If you didn't, well, don't worry. There's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. Busy Mosquito is looking in. Nice to see you. Hit subscribe, bottom left of your screen. It'd be nice to chat to you tomorrow as well. And let's just have a little chat about Disney, shall we? Because I get the feeling that people think of Disneyland as being one of those events that you do every now and then. For me, this is something I've never done. Never done. I mean, I went to Disney World when I was a kid, when I was like 12 with my dad for like a day. And that was, I have photographs, but I don't have great memories of that because it was such a long time ago. But the original Disneyland is here in California, in Anaheim. And so drove down there. It's about 45 minutes drive from my place. So it's really not far. And I had no idea as to how huge this place was. I really thought Disneyland was basically going to be about the size of just a zoo. I thought it'd be like the size of a zoo. Turns out it is literally like an entire city. It's incredible. It's just vast. And I have young kids, and so the idea was to take them straight to the Princess Castle, that famous Disneyland castle, and you can walk through it. And as you go through that castle, and they love that. Obviously, they've never seen a real castle before. Whether this was a real castle or not, I'll leave that up to you. But you could go in it, so we went in it afterwards. It's actually the Sleeping Beauty's castle. You walk through it, and then through the other side are a whole load of rides and experiences that date back to the original Disneyland. So that basically the original Disneyland took place on that little site through the castle. The castle was like the entrance. And there's like a Snow White's mine, and there's Sleeping Beauty's palace, and there's all sorts of like little things to do. The spinning teacups and the Dumbo ride that goes up and down. But the best thing was like the tiki show, which was a little hut that you go into. You sit with about 50 other people, maybe 100 other people, and you watch these animatronic birds sing a tiki song. And this is an original show from the 1960s, when it opened, or the late 50s. And the design and the animatronics were amazing. It totally stands the test of time. It's just very interesting to me that, like my favorite thing was something from literally like 50 years ago. It was wonderful. 60 years ago now. But the children loved it. Unfortunately, my daughter wasn't very well. And that's not a great thing. When you've spent that much money on an outing, you really want your kids to be well. So I shook her and I was like, pull yourself together. It was $800. I didn't really shake her. But I did give her lots of Tylenol. And I was like, come on, buck your ideas up. Nothing worse than like booking a trip to Disneyland and having one of your kids below par. There's a lot of emotional parental pressure to want them to have the best time. And if they're not smiling all the time, you want to know why. Robert just joined us from Hawaii. Hello, Robert. Welcome to Backchannel. Nice to see you. I mean, it was overwhelming for them, but it was kind of beautiful. Carla, I'll send you some photos. You need to see what went on. It was beautiful. I mean, my children are just angels, but just to see them, like, seeing these things, it was mind-blowing for them. Also, considering that for the last 2 years of the pandemic, they've basically been living in the house with their masks on, not going anywhere, So to suddenly go to Disneyland to kind of celebrate leaving the house for the first time in 2 years, it's quite a shift, It's quite a shift. Well, my boy wanted to see Spider-Man and the Hulk and, these kind of Marvel characters. And unfortunately, they weren't there because, we didn't go to California Adventure. We just went to Disneyland. And the two parks are next to each other. California Adventure and Disneyland are two parks within Disney. And then there's Epcot. I mean, there are so many parks. And you can only really do one a day. You know? It's a lot. It's a lot. But fortunately, all I really wanted to see was the Star Wars one. That was what I was waiting for. And I was worried that that would not be in the Disney park. And it turned out that it was. You know? It was in the Disney park. And so I was like super excited that I got to experience the whole Star Wars thing. And it blew my mind. I mean, genuinely, it was like better than you could ever imagine. And I can imagine quite a bit. That's a Star Wars reference line, that is. So, you know, just... This is all I would say about this, is it's like we are really now living in a time where you can access some of the most amazing things, you know, if you have the means to be able to go to Disney. I mean, I took my son on the monorail. My kid loves trains. And so to take him on the monorail, it's just a monorail that goes around the outside of the park. And it's like 15-minute ride, you know, round trip. Literally the best thing he's ever done. Couldn't believe it. Literally could not believe it. He thought it was amazing. Which is great, you know, because it was amazing. Completely amazing. Well, the whole food situation is bad. You know, there's a lot of pizza there and stuff like that. But actually, and all the food you order on your phone. You can't go up to a venue and order food. You have to pre-order it on your phone, and then they'll tell you when it's ready, then you go and get it, which is genius. You pay for it on your phone. It's genius. So wherever you are in the park, you can search for the nearest food place on the Disney app, and you just look at the menu, order the food, and then you go get it. It's brilliant. So we never went hungry. We were ordering food the whole time. The first meal I had was like a breakfast bowl of like quinoa breakfast bowl, which was delicious. And it had tater tots in it, fried tater tots. So it was a quinoa breakfast bowl with fried tater tots. And then we stopped and had some pineapple float ice cream at the tiki place. And then finally, I had what was the main course that I had? It was like a big salad. It was a big salad. So I managed to kind of avoid the bad stuff. You know, they did have choice. And it was great. You know, it was great. So, you know, this is the reality of Disneyland now, is that you can get regular meals. Fortunately. So, yeah. Carla, I'll send you some pictures so you can see the majesty of this trip. And you'll be able to see how much fun I had. Unfortunately, I can't share it with everybody else as well, because I'm just, you know, it's private. It's none of your business. But Carla's producing this show, and she deserves to know. You know, she deserves it. Okay, let's jump into this story about Alice Walker, the best-selling American poet and novelist. Very keen to talk to you about her. Her most famous work is the critically acclaimed novel, The Color Purple, and she won the National Pulitzer Prize and the Book Award, National Book Award and Pulitzer Prize, you know. It was later turned into an Oscar-nominated film directed by Steven Spielberg. It starred Whoopi Goldberg, of course, and now I think Whoopi Goldberg, she is the one who executive produced the Broadway play, you know? And the Broadway play starred Cynthia Erivo, and that was a really, really good show about, exactly the same story, but obviously with music. I don't think the original film had music, but it was beautiful. There's a couple of great songs in there. And I think that, wasn't that other girl in that show as well? I forget her name. Anyway, my point is that it was all rather, you know, it's one of the most moving shows I've ever seen. I went to see it on Broadway. One of the most moving shows I've ever seen, of course, and, you know, with the themes are that of slavery, and so it's a very serious subject, but it's so beautifully executed. Well, Alice Walker is a prominent black feminist and has coined the term womanist to represent her feminism. Her novel, Possessing the Secret of Joy, focused on female genital mutilation, which she advocates against. And her life and story is the story of The Color Purple, She was born in 1944 in the small rural town of Eatonton in Georgia. She was the eighth and last child of Lee Walker, and Tallulah Grant, two sharecroppers. And her parents' experiences with the oppressive sharecropping system. Hang on. It's playing some audio in my ear, and I can't. There we go. For some reason, it was playing the article in my ear. I can't deal with me talking and it talking at the same time. This is too much for a small man of my stature. Oh, Loyal Eel has just joined us, and Mushy Penguin's in, Powerful Eagle, and Robert. Thank you all for, joining in. Nice to see you all. I'm trying to find the full story here about the colour purple, and unfortunately it just keeps playing me the sound in the background, which is a little frustrating. But in 1961, on a scholarship for disabled students, Walker enrolled in Spelman College in Atlanta. She became active in the African American Civil Rights Movement. 2 years later, she transferred to the Sarah Lawrence College in New York and eventually traveled to Uganda as an exchange student, where she returned for her senior year. She was shocked to learn she was pregnant, and afraid of her parents' reaction, she considered suicide. However, a classmate helped Walker obtain a safe abortion, and she graduated from Sarah Lawrence in 1965. At this time, she composed two early landmark pieces, To Hell with Dying, her first published short story, and Once Poems, her first volume of poetry. She continued her involvement with the civil rights movement after graduation, working as a volunteer on black voter registration drives in Georgia and Mississippi in 1965. She married Melvin Leventhal, a Jewish civil rights lawyer with whom she had one daughter before the two divorced in the mid-1970s. Her second novel, Meridian, explored the controversial issue of sexism in the civil rights movement. In 1982, she published her most famous novel, The Color Purple, and for the novel, which chronicles the struggle of several black women in rural Georgia in the first half of the 20th century. Walker won the Pulitzer Prize and the American Book Award. In 1985, a Steven Spielberg movie based on the novel was released to wide audiences and significant acclaim. Upon its publication, The Color Purple unleashed a storm of controversy. It instigated heated debates about black cultural representation, as a number of male African-American critics complained the novel reaffirmed old racist stereotypes about pathology in black communities, and of black men in particular. Critics also charged Walker with focusing heavily on sexism at the expense of addressing notions of racism in America. Nonetheless, The Color Purple also had its ardent supporters, especially among black women and others who praised the novel as a feminist fable. While the heated disputes surrounding The Color Purple are testimony to the resounding effects the work has had on cultural and racial discourse in the United States. Walker's 1992 novel, Possessing the Secret Joy, concerns the marriage of Adam and Tashi, two characters who make their first appearance in The Color Purple, and the consequences of Tashi's decision to undergo the traditional African ritual of female circumcision. Walker has continued to explore the unique problems that face black women in both the United States and Africa. Her novels, poetry, essays, and criticism have become an important part in burgeoning tradition of talented black women writers. Do you know, I've been thinking a lot, it's kind of amazing kind of history to have been responsible for these works. But I was thinking a lot about how it's only really minority groups that are responsible for criticizing and therefore bringing about change. If you think about that for a second. Do you know what I mean? Because it's almost like white Americans, they're not interested in criticizing the country or therefore improving it, because they feel this kind of patriotic duty to support it as it is. But I feel like a lot of the change that's come about and a lot of the movements, obviously the civil rights movement is the biggest example of this, has come from people that are from ethnic minority groups or immigrants. People not born of America who have basically come and they see the environment and they're like, this needs to change for the better. They're not there to criticize because they want to bring it down. They're there to criticize because they want to open a conversation, to start a conversation about improving the country. And that's my opinion too, that really, as an immigrant myself, we have a perspective that maybe Americans who are born in the country, who haven't lived abroad, don't have. And that is why, it doesn't make us superior, it just gives us an alternative perspective. And it's that perspective that is very healthy to improve a state or a nation, a sovereign nation. Charlie's popped in from California. Hello, Fours in Minnesota. Loyal Eel has joined us as well. Mushy Penguin, Powerful Eagle, and Robert. Lots of no names as well. You can change your name. You can just ask your device to change your name. The other thing you can do is hit the subscribe button as well, because as you know, that's a new way of getting in touch. It's now applicable to any visual device that you might be using, whether that be a Fire Stick or a Fire TV or a Fire Tablet or an Echo Show. You can touch the subscribe button located on the screen, and you are now connected to the show's activity, and you can receive reminders on the show's broadcast, and you'll always be in the know. So the subscribe button is on the bottom left of the screen, and also being reminded means alarm will go off on your device at the start of every episode. So that's how the new subscribe feature works, and it's definitely a good one. And just a reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Alison's Good Morning. Start your morning from 6 a.m. Eastern with 2 hours of silly fun and games. Haley and Alison and producer Will will have trivia and the answers to your burning questions and the news you might have missed. Also, Live Every Day with Liv Harrison from 7 a.m. Eastern. Join Liv every Monday, Wednesday and Friday to celebrate the little things in life in an extraordinary way. Candid conversations, lots of laughs, and plenty of coffee. It'll fuel you and encourage you to live every day. And then just before me is Get On Up with Jam and Renee. Wake Up on the West Coast with Community and Conscious Living. Jam and Renee have it all covered, from what people think to who's wearing what. You'll leave entertained and enlightened every day and learn how to pay it forward. So there we go, something to look forward to, isn't it? And then a reminder that if you go to backchannel.tv, you can message me there. But you can also leave a review for any of the shows at backchannel.tv. Send us your thoughts on the show and leave suggestions for upcoming segments as well. So very, very easy to do and very easy to join in. So, yeah, there we go. Wonderful. Susan's dropped in. Hello, Susan. Powerful Eagle is with us. Charlie is here as well. And 4 is in Minnesota. It's a great name, isn't it? Just the number 4. That's the kind of name I kind of like. So thank you for joining in. Let's just do a little recap on what we've been doing today. We looked through the morning papers. We talked about some of the big stories making the headlines in the New York Times, in Buffalo, and Omaha, and Florida, Times-Union, and the like. We also discussed 3 major topics. The former Missouri governor, Eric Greitens, whose ex-wife recently accused him of physical abuse, and says he will not drop his political comeback bid. And we were asking if politicians need to have a little more shame in order to be taken seriously. Also, the Americans over the age of 60 who should get a second COVID vaccine booster, according to the new White House official, Dr. Ashish Jha, who said there's now pretty compelling evidence that the second round of corona booster vaccines would help older people. So we were talking about the importance of that and looking at this new hierarchy in the White House's coronavirus response group, And tomorrow morning we'll have a whole new stack of newspapers, but if you have a specific favorite or one that you would like us to review, you can let me know now. Just call it out with your Echo Show, wake it up, say the word say, and then name your local paper, and we'll make sure that that's part of tomorrow morning's show as well. We also had our interactive quiz. We call it the interactive quiz, which we did earlier, and that in which we asked the interactive question, which state does a Veterans Treatment Court lead as a shining example helping those who've served? And you correctly answered Nebraska. We also talked about the state that has an extensive expansion of public transport, and you interacted with the answer Omaha. And then the final question in our interactive quiz was, in which state was there a story about a safe space for black and gay people following the opening of the new LGBTQ center? And the answer there was Akron, Ohio. So there it is. That's how our show looked today. The all-new interactive Anthony Davis show. And we'll be back to do it again tomorrow at the same time. If you'd like to join me then, you are very welcome. Just wake up your Echo show and ask it to open Backchannel, and you can join in at backchannel.tv, and of course on the live stream on YouTube as well. So all these great ways to interact with the all-new interactive Anthony Davis show. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Stick around for Your Pal Hal.